Hey friends, how are you today? Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. Thank you so much for being here. We are well into December and the rush of the holidays is starting to increase its pace, increase its frantic energy that you might feel. Perhaps you're feeling the urgency of the season to go to all the parties, do all the activities, buy all the presents. And I just hope that this episode can be a little reprieve for you amongst the chaos. I hope you can feel a little inspiration and a little peace. And if you do have to continue on with your to-do list, I hope I can come along for the ride with you in your headphones and do this thing together. Today's episode is coming at you with really good timing because I'm joined by Claire Thomas, who is a certified mental fitness coach in the UK. And man, if there's ever a time we need mental fitness, it's during the holiday season. The kids are home, the sugar is high, the sun sets early. The family, the extended family can feel a little tense. I mean, my blood pressure is rising already. Is that just me? So Claire shares her expertise today on how building resilience and unlocking your full potential can help you become more mentally fit. We also talk about what is happening in our minds and in our bodies when we feel emotionally stuck or in a rut. I mean, have you ever felt that way? Like perhaps you're drowning a bit and you forget how to swim, that feeling of stuckness. Claire shares her personal experience of climbing her way out of her stuckness and how travel played a part in this and how mental fitness really cultivated within her. And we talk a lot about how we can apply the practices of mindfulness towards your life, and especially during your travels, I guess, during this time of year. So buckle up. We've got a gold mine of an episode ahead of you. I will see you on the other side of the episode where I'm going to share one of my favorite tips for staying grounded during the holiday season. So stay tuned all the way to the end of the episode for that. I will see you soon. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Transform with Travel podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Tolliday, and I am the founder of Transform with Travel. We are your one-stop shop for intentional, immersive travel experiences. And one of the ways we inspire adventure is through this podcast. So if you like free inspiration, go ahead and click the subscribe button from wherever you're listening from. And that's all I'm going to ask from you today. You are in for a treat because I'm chatting with Claire Thomas, who is a certified mental fitness coach in the United Kingdom, one of very few who are actually certified in this specific field of mindset coaching. And she's the founder of Reaching My Best. And today we're going to be talking about the power of mindset and what is happening to us when we're feeling stuck or in a rut in our lives, and how travel can play an important role in getting unstuck. She's also going to give us tips on how to just be when we travel instead of constantly doing. And this is a selfish question for me because I need to work on that. So I'm excited to get to that part of the episode. So thank you, Claire, for joining me today.
My pleasure. It's absolutely lovely to be here.
Amazing. And so to start the episode off, we've been playing a little game here at the podcast. Have you heard of Two Truths and a Lie?
I have. I'm not very good at lying though.
Okay, so we're gonna see how this goes. We're gonna do Two Truths and a Lie travel edition. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
So I nearly missed my flight from LA to London because I was too hungover.
Okay, plausible.
My retinas detached when I was bungee jumping a 75-meter drop in New Zealand.
Ooh, okay.
And I used to live in Sydney, Barcelona, and Paris.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, okay. So when I went bungee jumping in New Zealand, my mother-in-law kept telling me your eyes are going to detach. Like she's like, I've heard it before, and she worked in a hospital. So I was like, oh my God, this is going to happen to me. And it didn't. So that one I'm kind of leaning towards maybe, but also living in three major cities and then also going back to your home country in one lifetime is a lot. So I think I'm going to go with the bungee jumping one, but I feel like I might be wrong.
You are right. I
Oh,
did the bungee jump, but my retinas very much stayed attached,
well, that's
despite
good.
everybody telling me the same thing. Yeah.
I know. So
Yeah.
I wonder if there's like actual like basis around that or whether
Yeah, I
that's
don't know.
just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Which bungee jump did you do?
We're going back so many years. I don't know. I can even remember. There were two. They were on the South Island. I remember
Yeah.
that. And there was two. One was over a river, so you could like dangle your
Yeah,
fingers.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then the other one was the next day. Why I did two, I have no idea. That one really scared me, and that was
Oh my
so
God.
much higher.
Yeah, 70. So
Yeah.
I think the bridge one over the river is like
Yeah.
44 meters
Yeah.
maybe. I think it's the Kawara because that's the one that I
That sounds
did.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the Nevis maybe, and
Maybe.
that one is the big one. Like,
Yeah.
that's huge. So
Yeah.
props to you. Okay, fun.
Yeah.
So we spoke a little bit a couple weeks ago. A friend of ours was like, "You guys have to meet. I think you have a lot in common." And we met and we are like, "Let's get on the podcast together." And what I really like about what you do specifically for women was really based around your own personal story
Mm.
of feeling, stuck in your life or feeling like you're just in this like creative rut and you weren't sure, like you had everything great on paper, but you weren't quite sure, why it was still feeling a little uneasy. Can you explain like how that feeling felt for you and what was kind of going on in your life at that time?
So I think it's something that keeps coming back as well, which I think is also really interesting, maybe just in different forms. But I suppose it starts with maybe following a career path that you landed in rather than chose. So I chose this career path of being a management consultant with lots of traveling, and that was really good at the time, but I didn't realize the downsides of it, like not being able to form really close friendships with people outside of work because I just simply wasn't in the country, working 12, 15-hour days, constantly traveling. And that first time I felt that sort of feeling of burnout kind of manifested itself in tension. So I started to get RSI, repetitive stress injury, in my arm, and then that went all the way up into my neck, and I was really locked. And that sort of
Mm,
set me on the path of, well, what can I do to look after my body more? So I developed a passion for Tai Chi, for yoga, those sorts of things, and that's always stuck. So I moved jobs and changed into something that had less travel, but an element of that. But again, it wasn't really something that made me happy. So then, fast forward a few years, I had my first daughter and realized that I couldn't keep up that sort of lifestyle and have this balance of being a mum as well, particularly as my husband was still in that sort of industry. So I was like, well, what do I do now? And I realized that I had always wanted to do something creative, that I had a creative side in me. So I retrained as an interior designer, which was kind of like felt completely off kilter, but really, really enjoyed that sort of creativity. And that paired with the skills that I'd picked up in consultancy, like client management, program management, all these things, was really good. But then I got burnt out from that because I didn't have some of the personal skills you need to when you run your own business about managing conflict or dispute, or the boundaries were even worse because
mm,
I was putting all hours into my work because that's what I felt like I needed to do. My work came on holiday with me. My phone and my laptop were always there with me. And after 7 years, I realized that the reward time investment ratio with that and the stress and the financial investment, that whole ratio was completely off, and felt burnt out from that as well. So
mm,
then went back into the corporate world and ended up in a job again that I didn't really necessarily want to have, and again found myself in a situation where I had a manager that was challenging. And it was at that point I found coaching and have been on that self development route since, which is something that I really love. And intertwined with all of that, one of my coping mechanisms for having all that stress was learning how to do mindfulness, how to meditate, and have more control over those moments of stress, and being able to, instead of relying on that automatic unconscious response in a moment of stress, to be able to take a breath and say, okay, I have a choice in this moment to do something different.
mm. And in each of those scenarios where you're first run in with burnout in your first corporate job, and then your burnout in your interior design company, and then your burnout with the third, with the manager. Was there similar? I know you mentioned it manifested in the form of tension in your body. Each time that you got to that stage of burnout, was it similar symptoms each time? And were you getting better and better at recognizing that things weren't aligned?
That sort of tension in my body is something that I'm aware of now. But no, I think it's unfortunately been different each time. So the last time was feeling like I was on this hamster wheel or some
Mm,
sort of process where on a literally I think it was a 6 week cycle of I would everything would have just exploded, everything would calm down and be like, okay, it's going to be okay, carry on, I can cope with this environment, I can get used to it. And then little things would start happening and I'd get more and more wound up as the weeks would go on.
mhm.
And then after about 6 weeks it'll be crying, I don't want to go to work, I hate this, being grumpy, getting cold sores. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's so interesting. Because I also have a similar experience with running into burnout where I ended up in the hospital in 2021. And then I had a small bout of it last year where, again, I almost went into the hospital. And so it's interesting. Like, I find with me with burnout, it's little things that shouldn't send me over the edge end up
yeah,
sending me over the edge.
yeah,
And with you talking about having a child and like, especially when they're younger, like, it's almost like I can't cope with having the demands of a little child around
yeah,
when like it's actually like fairly easy requests that they're making. But when I
yeah,
am reaching that level of just not recognizing those symptoms in myself,
yeah,
it's like the little things that really shouldn't send you over the edge do. And that's when now I've gotten better at recognizing, okay, something's off here.
yeah.
You talk about like feeling stuck or potentially even feeling resentful with the life that you have chosen for yourself. What's happening as a mental fitness coach now? And now you knowing what you know now as a mindset coach and really working with like loads of women around the world. Can you explain what's happening in our minds or in our bodies that we get to that point of feeling like just totally resentful, totally tapped out with life?
Underneath everything, underneath all of our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions, sit beliefs and behaviors that we're either aware of or we're not aware of that have been imposed upon us or we've imposed on ourselves consciously or unconsciously. And my biggest realization, and something that I try to share with my clients, although it's conceptually it's easy to understand but not necessarily to feel, is
Mhm.
that generally what happens is the actions you are taking are not aligned with your values. And when your life is not aligned with the core of who you really are inside, things go wrong. It just happens because it's like you're forcing that, square peg into a round hole is the expression we use over here a lot, but you're,
Yeah.
you're forcing something to work when it's not, you don't have the energy for it to be like that. And that is when this burnout happens.
Yeah, what you just said, not having the energy, that I find is to be the overall sense of when you hit that sense of feeling stuck, feeling burnt out, feeling resentful. One phrase you use a lot on your site or even explaining your own story is this concept of resisting life. And I really love that because I come from a yoga background and a lot of what we talk about is the act of surrender.
Yeah,
And when we're resisting life as it's unfolding, like we want it to be a certain
yeah,
way and it's not turning out that way,
yeah.
that's us resisting. What are signs, in your opinion? What are signs someone is resisting life?
Anytime that you feel that something is too hard, that life doesn't need to be hard, and that triggers a lot of people to even just say that. But life can be easy. It's about finding a way of making it easier. Um, and often we unconsciously choose difficult paths.
Wait. I'm going to say that again. Unconsciously, we choose difficult paths.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that might mean? Like, or an example of what that might look like?
Say, for example, you believe that in the workplace you are due a promotion and you believe that to get that promotion, you have to work really hard, that you have to do 12 hours a day, that you have to over deliver. that you have to say yes to everything that your manager tells you to do. That is making your life hard. If you can take a step back and think about it and say, okay, well, what if it's not about what I do, but it's about how I show up? And I recognize that quality generally wins over quantity. And that if I show up in a way that gives my best, but still allows me to have time to look after myself, that makes me a more valuable employee. And I will
Mm,
get my promotion based on that and based on my way of being and the relationships I have with people. And that will help me perform and be productive rather than pushing and doing an extra 20 hours when you're too tired and you're making
yeah.
mistakes all over the place.
So true. Because I mean, so many of us have been told to be successful, you have to work hard. And
Yeah.
you do. Like no matter where you are, whoever you see who is highly successful, they have worked hard to get there. However, burning yourself out in the process just is going to put you 10 steps back. So I think that's a really powerful point. We'll get back to the show in just a moment. At the end of every episode, I always ask my guests what their favorite must have travel item is. And I want to take a quick moment to share with you one of mine, a travel companion that's just as essential as your passport: Arch Rome Right Travel Insurance. Whether you're exploring the vineyards of Italy or trekking through the Andes, travel is thrilling and transformative. But sometimes unexpected events can put a pause on our plans. That's where Arch Rome Right steps in. With a focus on specialized travel insurance solutions, they're here to assist you in navigating those unforeseen travel hiccups. I once was stuck in the middle of an island in Indonesia during a massive earthquake, and we lost personal belongings, 3 months worth of accommodation, and we racked up expenses with last minute flights and hotels. I only wish I knew about Arch Rome Right travel insurance back then. From trip cancellations and medical emergencies to lost luggage and delays, Arch Rome offers insurance plans that cover what matters most, and most importantly, gives you peace of mind. Each plan is backed by Arch Insurance's strong financial ratings and a team dedicated to exceptional customer service, recognized for their expertise and responsiveness. But what truly sets Arch Rome apart? Their innovative approach combines state of the art technology with real human experiences, providing you with transparent and swift service. Join the millions who trust Arch Rome and make your next trip a little smoother. Head to the show notes to find and use my personal affiliate link to get a quote today. Thanks to Arch Rome for supporting our show. And you mentioned previously with the concept of learning how to surrender, also on your website. I
Yeah.
love this phrase: when we learn to surrender, we
Yeah.
become unstoppable.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, what we think is, if I slow down, if I don't take on that project, if I don't take on that client, if I'm not at every single PTA meeting, parent teacher association, I don't know,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that, if I don't say yes to all the things, I'm not going to have this forward momentum anymore, especially as a business owner. If I don't say yes to all the opportunities, then none will end up coming my
Yeah.
way. But actually, you're saying the reverse is true.
Yeah.
When you surrender to the way that life's unfolding for you, instead of constantly trying to bang the doors down yourself, then you actually become unstoppable in your life.
Yeah.
I would love to hear how you came to that realization within your own life. And then let's start with that. How did you come to that realization? Like, was there something in particular that happened for you?
So the biggest thing was because of my meditation, mindfulness practice, I met a guy who also did a lot of mindfulness. He had been an addict in his younger life and he's completely changed that situation and went on to study psychology and all these sorts of things. So I was having some really fascinating conversations with him around meditating, and he told me about a type of meditation called Vipassana. So
Mm-hmm.
Vipassana is when you go to a particular retreat type place for 10 days and you follow a very specific structure to your day. It's in complete silence. Most of the day is about meditating, and you're taught how to do that. And he said to me that when I come out of doing that, I will feel unstoppable and my levels of productivity will be greater than I could even imagine. And I found that a curious concept because I'm a very productive person anyway, which probably is what helps me burn out. not in the good way, obviously. So I went and I did this 10-day silent Vipassana. And it was true when I came out, your perspective and the clarity you have in your mind is coming from this place of everything is possible and life is just happening. And all the noise that, when you actually think about it, takes up so much energy and so much time, is not there. So in that space, you can only be unstoppable, because in less time you produce way more.
In less time, you produce way more. For everyone listening,
Yeah.
all of our
Yeah.
all of our recovering overachievers.
Yeah.
I find that so fascinating.
Yeah.
I've been studying yoga for a long time, and two of the cornerstones of yoga are vairagya and abhyasa. Never give up and keep letting go. Never give up and keep letting go. And in the letting go, you're allowing, like you just said, you're letting go a lot of times the parts of your brain, the thought processes,
Yeah.
the limiting beliefs, the
Yeah.
things that are just clouding your brain, taking up space,
Yeah.
that's preventing you from finding creative solutions to problems
Yeah.
and creative ways to connect with the people that you love. And
Yeah.
I love that. Part two of that question was, what are some strategies to help, let's say, someone like myself who is type A, recovering overachiever, perfectionist, all the things? Like, I feel like I relate to you so much.
Yeah.
What are some strategies? And you kind of mentioned this already, but when you're talking to clients who are perhaps in a similar, stage of life or similar type of mindset of do, what are some strategies to lean into that surrender more? Because it feels super uncomfortable when you're not
It really,
used to it.
yeah, it really does. I mean, I think the biggest learning for me on a sort of a more daily basis, because obviously you can't go and do a Vipassana every month, is to get into the practice of, well, meditating every day, because it helps you become, and when you're meditating, and it's not about removing your thoughts, it's just having that awareness of them so you can then let them go. So having that sort of practice is incredible for it, but then also trying to find a way to be before you do, and to let your being lead your doing.
So let your being guide your doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want to really touch on that when we get into the travel piece, because I think it's a perfect conversation around this. So I feel like when we travel, we want to disconnect from that constant doing of our work, of leading our families, of our health, our everything. We're on top of it when we're at home. And then we go on this trip that's supposed to help us disconnect. And then let's say you're working with a woman like myself. I've got my itinerary, I've got my schedule, I've got this, but then I see on TripAdvisor and Instagram, they should do all these things or else they're doing the place wrong. And now you're overloaded with your schedule and you're doing, and you're not doing the thing that you said you were going to do, which is just be and
Yeah,
be in the present moment. So I think that's really powerful, is let your being guide your doing, but it's a lot easier to say than it is to like put it into practice
yeah,
when you're somebody who's been a human doing instead of a human being your whole life.
yeah,
What
totally.
are some ways, like say, like you're coaching a woman who's about to go on their, let's say, their first holiday in a long time? What would be some of the things that you would coach them or strategies that you would give to them to help them access that place of being?
I think there's a lot around removing distractions. I would be asking what role your mobile phone has to play in your traveling, because if you're constantly messaging friends and checking posts and all this sort of thing, are you really experiencing what's there? Or is there something else going on? Is there some FOMO that's happening that is stopping you from being present in what you're seeing and experiencing in that particular place? So I would definitely explore the role the mobile phone has in the travel. One of my favorite things to do when I'm traveling is to go and sit in a cafe, coffee shop, and just watch the world go by. I think it's the best thing ever to do, and to just become curious about the way that different cultures do different things. An example that comes straight to mind is last year, my husband was living in Copenhagen for a while. I went out there a few times to stay, and sitting in coffee shops, noticed that the custom there is to leave your baby in the pushchair outside while you're inside having your coffee. Now that just does not exist as a concept. You would probably get arrested
Yeah,
and
you get
reported
CPS called on
to
you.
Child Protection
Yeah.
Services, exactly, if you were to do that here. But there, everybody is looking out for all of the children. They've got these really cool little walkie-talkie type things that you can see and hear what your child is doing. So it's perfectly
Mm,
fine. But just observing those things is really interesting, and it makes you think about where your behaviors come from, what beliefs and customs you have in your
mm.
country, and why those are there. Just even that as a thought process makes you stop and learn to be more.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and it's something that we talk a lot about on our retreats. We run group tours and retreats around the world, and yes, we have yoga and meditation and workshops, and all the things that help you on your personal development journey. But we really try to make the travel piece, the culture piece, the main event of personal development. Like you just said, like let's observe how slow the pace of life
Yeah,
is in the Greek islands. Let's just observe the passion and commitment to protting the environment in Costa Rica. Like, how can we weave those things into our own personal development? So,
yeah,
I really love that piece because there's a really strong mindfulness component to
yeah,
that. But the piece about the phone, you touched on the FOMO, and a flash just came into my mind. I was just in Costa Rica 2 weeks ago. I was scrolling through my phone. I'm in the middle of the jungle, ocean view, beautiful house, and my friend's in Mallorca with her family. And I was like, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. Like, ooh, maybe we should plan a trip to Mallorca. And I'm like, I'm in the freaking Costa Rican
yeah,
jungle and I'm comparing, not even comparing, I'm not even in the Costa Rican jungle.
yeah,
I am in the ethers of the internet picturing myself somewhere else.
yeah,
That is the complete opposite
yeah,
of what that trip is about.
yeah,
And also, are we taking pictures of our trip to remember these memories, or are we taking pictures so that we're creating some narrative for some cyber identity that we have? And that's completely taking ourselves away from the present moment.
yeah,
So, those two things alone seem so simple,
yeah.
but are really powerful.
Yeah. And I think go back, well, how many years would it be now? Like 30 years probably. People didn't take cameras weren't on mobile phones. Everybody
Hmm.
took a camera. So what if you took a camera? And it actually reminds me of a game we used to play with my girls when they're a bit younger. And we would go for dog walks as a family. And obviously they would complain about going for a walk. Why would they want to go for a walk? So we turned it into the walks into photography competitions. So you go on a walk and you take photographs of whatever you want to take photographs. You get back, you go through them, you choose your favorite four, and then they get judged and there's a winner. And it was always so fascinating to see what each of us saw on that walk and the different perspectives. And it was just always so insightful and rewarding and creative and just such a beautiful experience.
Oh, I really love that because my girls are getting to the age where I might get them little, like, mini cameras for
Yeah,
Christmas because we travel a lot, so that's really, really beautiful.
yeah,
I love that. And so you're a mental fitness coach, and you help women, specifically people-pleasing women,
yeah,
who know that they can feel more out of life
yeah,
and be more in their own lives. How do you think, because you've traveled a lot, you said you lived in Sydney, you lived in Barcelona, you lived in Paris, you've traveled all over the world. We have lots of stories from Mexico to France. Like,
yeah.
I love how much travel has played such a role in your life. How important do you feel travel is as a role in someone's mental fitness journey or their mindset journey?
What comes to me most is that when you travel, you're out of your natural environment, your natural habitat. So everything feels uncomfortable, particularly if you don't speak the language and the customs are different, the smells are different, etc. So you're definitely more on alert and more likely to be triggered when the smallest things can go wrong. But being able to connect with yourself and rely on those sort of habits that you've built up by having strong mental fitness, you can pretty much take on any challenge without letting it bother you because you've built in that instinct to stop and choose what your response is going to be.
So you've mentioned meditation and mindfulness. What would be some of your top, I guess, recommendations to a client in terms of their roadmap from point A to point B. Like they're totally deteriorating mindset, like resentful, in a rut, kind of where we were both talking about that we've both been,
Yeah.
to point B of that person who can just take life as it comes. And like you said, not let the little things, especially as we travel, get us to an explosion of rage. What would be kind of your top three to get there?
The first one is to start small. If I said to you, go and sit on that cushion with your, well, you do yoga, you might be very flexible and be able to sit in the lotus position very comfortably for an hour. But for most people, they'd be like, I can't do that. And that would automatically be a resistance. But it's about finding the time, even if that time is just 1 minute, to remove yourself from your routine, to sit somewhere quietly in whatever position feels comfortable, and just like connect with your breathing to start off with, just to notice it. And even doing 1 minute will make a difference. But then the next one is having the consistency. Doing 1 minute randomly is never going to help, because you're not building up those neural pathways that make it become an instinct and automatic behavior. So it's about finding a time of day where you can commit to doing it. And for most people, that the best time of day is first thing in the morning, particularly if you have children. For me, it was like, I would rather get up, started 5 minutes earlier, and have 5 minutes to myself and know that I'm going to have that 5 minutes than not do it. And then once you get the benefit from that 5 minutes, it's like, okay, well, actually, I can see that I'd get even more benefit if I did 10. And it builds up from that. So starting small, consistency is two things. The other is a lot of people's resistance around mindfulness or meditation or those sorts of things is, I am doing it wrong. You can't do it wrong. There is no doing it wrong. It's not about emptying your mind of thoughts. It's about being aware of your thoughts. It's about reconnecting with your senses and sensations in your body. There is no doing it wrong. Some days it's easy, some days it's hard. It doesn't matter. It's all beneficial. And I think particularly if you're somebody who's used to achieving or has perfectionist tendencies, which is definitely me, that can be really hard. So it's like leaning into that, letting go and accepting that today it's hard, tomorrow it might be easier. And then the
Mm,
more that you do that, the more opportunities you have in life to put it to practice. So then the first time your child breaks something you love, and you, rather than automatically screaming, you stop and you say, oh, okay. And your response is different. It feels so good.
yeah, I can 100% relate to that. You mentioned a child, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a story of your own child when she was 16 having to get on a different flight than you and having a flight canceled, having to stay overnight in Munich. Can you talk about how your own mental fitness, mental resilience journey helped you stay calm during this particular scenario, and maybe do a backstory of what that scenario actually was?
Yeah, so this was actually quite recent. It was this summer. Adele came to Munich, which is very exciting. And as a family, we really love Adele. So we booked tickets ages ago. And then for one reason or another, my eldest daughter got a place on a course. And that meant that she couldn't fly out with my youngest daughter and I. So I put her onto her own flight, which in itself was like a and I was like,
Mhm.
it's okay, because once you get to the airport, you pretty much follow the signs. It's okay. And she's got her head screwed on, right? So I kind of was okay with that. So fine. She had to get to the airport herself on the underground. That was all fine. But as my other daughter and I landed and I turned on my phone, I have an email saying that her flight has been cancelled. Not only has it been
Oh,
cancelled, but the flight they were rebooking her onto wouldn't have even got her there in time to make it to see the concert. And I knew that I had to be calm in that moment, and I knew there would be a solution. And my youngest daughter, who I was with, can be quite sensitive. She's quite sensitive and she can take on this sort of stressful energy. So I tried to keep really calm so she wouldn't get anxious. And I messaged my other daughter and said, your flight's been cancelled. Just stay at the airport. We'll be in touch as soon as we can. And basically, my husband was who was in the UK still. We were coordinating to try and get her an alternative flight. The only choice on that was her to get a flight the next day and to either go all the way back home again and be back again for like 4 a.m. in the morning, or to stay overnight in a hotel. So she chose to stay overnight in a hotel. Now, again, out of choice, I wouldn't say that I would want my 16-year-old daughter to stay in a random hotel and airport on her own.
100%. Yeah.
But I trust her, and I didn't want to project onto her any anxiety I might be feeling. So she made that fun, and she had a really good time, with technology, kind of FaceTime and talk, and that was all okay. And then fast forward a bit, she got the flight the next morning, but she had to change airlines halfway. That first flight was running late. The second flight she was waitlisted on, so she still maybe wasn't going to get there. But all of that time, I'm trying to be calm to her so that she's not picking up on that anxiety. And I mean, it was such a relief when she came through that barrier at the arrivals gate, and you have that sort of the film with Hugh Grant at the airport,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you sort of that emotional
Stunning.
moment where you see somebody you love and everything's okay. It felt very much like that. And I was so proud of her because it was a big deal. She handled it beautifully. And had I been anxious and stressed about it, it would have been a disaster. She would have been stressed. It would have just not felt great, but it was all fine. And that reaction and all of those steps comes down to the fact that I practice mindfulness, and my daughters, they don't practice it, but they pick that up from me.
Raise your hand if you feel anxious before a travel day. I mean, just trying to pack can send even an experienced traveler into a tailspin. And don't even get me started on how nervous I can still feel on an airplane with turbulence or when I'm stuck in large crowds. Whether it's pre-travel jitters, travel day anxiety, or destination overwhelm, we have all felt the stress of travel in some way. After traveling all over the world and hosting group retreats in 7 countries, I've experienced all of the highs and lows of travel. Flight delays, natural disasters, lost luggage, toddler tantrums, being stuck in airports overnight, last-minute Airbnb cancellations, getting scammed, and so much more. With 17 years of yoga practice under my belt, 7 years of teaching and educating, and over 600 hours of training, I can truly say I've tried it all. I've learned how to apply mindfulness to navigate travel stress with presence and joy and not let those travel mishaps and stress ruin my trip as a whole. Because of my unique experience of blending travel and wellness, I'm here as your trusted co-pilot to help you experience the vacation of your dreams by applying the principles of mindfulness. So I'm so excited to announce today that we've officially launched our latest ebook, The Mindful Traveler: How to Navigate Travel Stress with a Smile. This ebook is jam-packed with practices, strategies, techniques, journal prompts, and so much more. And it was designed to guide you to a more easeful travel experience no matter what happens on the road. There's even a meditation for turbulence and anxious flyers. So download the ebook today at www.transformwithtravel.co, that's .co, and get 10% off your order by using the code LAUNCH10. Embark on a journey of tranquil travels with our new ebook, The Mindful Traveler. You can get it at www.transformwithtravel.co, and be sure to use the code LAUNCH10 for 10% off your order. You, as a parent, your instinct is to protect and go into survival mode for them.
Yeah.
So that must have taken quite a bit of almost like restraint to, okay, let's harness this part of me in that
Yeah.
wants to go full mama bear mode
Yeah.
and bring this other part of me in that I've cultivated. And that's not something that happens overnight.
No.
That's why it's important to, even like you said, even if it's 1 minute a day that you can commit
Yeah.
to, that 1 minute over
Yeah.
1 year, over 5 years, over 16 years of your daughter being on this earth, like that's
Yeah.
going to serve you in the long run. That's incredible.
And ultimately, what is my role as a mother? Is it to do everything for my daughter, or is it to help her have experiences that are life experiences that are going to serve her for the rest of her life? So obviously there are times when you let them have those experiences, and times when you have no choice over it, but the lessons that she has from that experience are incredible.
Yeah. And even let's say like she didn't make the concert in time. Like what would have been your strategy for coping with that disappointment? Because that's a big thing that people deal with travel is,
Yeah.
oh, we're supposed to go on this all inclusive in Mexico, but there's a hurricane and it has to cancel. Oh, I was supposed to do this thing and that happened. This and that, this and that. What do you think if you could project yourself in those shoes? What do you think would have been your strategy for coping with a level of disappointment while traveling?
That's a really tough one, because for this one, she was particularly emotionally invested in it. So I know that she would have been massively disappointed if she hadn't made
Mhm.
it. But I mean, in general, life happens. These things happen, and there's always disappointment in life, and it's about how we deal with it that shapes us moving forward. You have to take the punches with the good things. Life doesn't end because you didn't make it to a concert. Yes, you might be
Mhm.
disappointed, but it feels like the end of the world in that moment. But what a privilege and an honor to be able to go to the concert in the first place. And I think she would get that. She would be disappointed, but she actually would get that.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful what you're saying is it's okay that you feel
Yeah,
disappointed. Yes, that's valid. And then also big picture and
yeah,
perspective. And I think that's something that as travelers is very important when you layer this piece of mindfulness on top like you've been mentioning
yeah,
is allowing yourself to feel the disappointment, feel the frustration, feel the anger, whatever it is, but then also how fast can you pivot to the
yeah,
bigger perspective of it? That's what helps things feel successful as a traveler.
yeah,
Like you can look back on your trip and be like, okay, all of these things might have gone wrong, but
yeah,
but then also in life, you can apply that to life. You
yeah,
know, I always like adulting is a series of just unfortunate events that just happen, but there's
yeah,
also so much beauty in it
yeah,
too. And it's like, how can you layer that perspective on it? So I really appreciate
yeah.
you sharing that story. And before we wrap up the episode, I just want to give you some space to, if there was any last thing that you'd like to share or anything at all that you'd love our audience to walk away with from this episode.
The main thing is that sometimes we get so caught up in the doing of life that we do forget this big picture. We kind of believe that we're in control of our lives and it's our destiny. But really, if you keep zooming out and out and out and out, and you say up on the International Space Station looking down, we are insignificant, and it is a miracle that we are here, and that everything that has happened up until this point in time is why we are here, and it is a miracle. And it's so easy to get caught up in the doing of life that we forget that it's kind of like a game of life. And what if we were to harness that joy, that awe, have more love, kindness, and compassion, rather than getting caught up in the distractions of social media, FOMO, striving for something, and burning out at the same time.
So good. I was just thinking, me and my best friend, we went, drove, and we figured out childcare, figured out, I moved meetings around because there was a tiny bit of surf up the coast. It took us like an hour and a half to get there. And I was in the water, didn't think about work once, didn't think about anything, got out of the water. I had like 47 emails and I was just like, put the phone away. And I was like, this is what life is about.
Yeah,
Yes, the emails are important. There's real material motive. We need to have food, we need to have shelter. You want to feel comfortable, right?
yeah,
However, like there's so much more to life. And that's what I love about the retreats and what I love
yeah,
about travel is that you get connected to nature and other cultures and you get connected to the thrum of life, the zest of life. And like you said the word awe. And I really love that. I think if we tapped more into this childlike awe and
Yeah.
wonder with we don't even need to travel, just your community, your environment, your home, your
Yeah.
block around your street. If we tapped more into that, taking photos of the small, simple things on a walk with your children
Yeah.
can just remind you that it's all around you. And that's what life is all about.
Exactly. Yeah, no, well said.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So, we wrap up our episodes with 3 questions. They're short and sharp, so
Okay.
I won't ask you to think too hard on these. Okay, so number one, what country or place has made the biggest impact on you?
Marrakesh.
Oh, I love that. Can I ask why?
It's something about the energy there and the community and how everything's really close, but you can really feel the creativity that comes from just being in those souks. Brilliant.
Yeah, I haven't been and I haven't really had a desire, but lately I keep getting this call to
Awesome.
I'm very interested. So I'm
I'll
glad you
see you
said that.
there.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, number 2, what is your go-to travel accessory or like what's your must-have item when you're flying or traveling?
Ooh, that's a hard one. A must have. These days, it's probably those vacuum packs that you can make your clothes smaller in,
Oh
so that
yeah,
I
so
can
good.
come back with more.
Exactly. I love that. And you stay organized so you're not stressed while you're traveling. Mindfulness.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the last one is what's the biggest life lesson that you've learned while traveling?
It's probably something like underneath it all, we are just, all the different ways of doing everything, all the customs, beliefs, everything. We're all human.
Yeah.
Wherever you go, we're all human. We all deserve kindness. We all have love. We all get angry. We're just all human.
I love that. I think it's such an important piece. I always say, like, people are inherently good. And if you seek the good out, 9 times out of 10, you'll receive it
Yeah,
back. I think that's an interesting perspective that you've
yeah,
been all over the place and you can still walk away being like,
yeah,
everyone, we are all the same.
yeah.
I love that. Thank you, Claire. How can people connect with you? They've listened to this episode. They were like, I want to reach out to Claire and say hi and connect. What's the best way for them to do that?
My website, reachingmybest.com, that has all my social media links, or you can book a call with me, send me an email. That's Claire at reachingmybest.com. So, yeah, I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay. And if someone was like, they feel really aligned with the way that you were speaking, if they wanted to work with you, either one on one or group coaching, you have those types of services on your website,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Wow, I just feel so calm, so peaceful, so excited to turn obstacles into opportunities. Claire's grounded approach to building resilience, overcoming obstacles, and applying mindfulness really just feels so approachable and doable. I hope there is at least one nugget of wisdom from this episode that you can take with you during the remainder of the silly season, as my Aussie counterparts say. And as promised, here is one of my favorite tips for staying grounded while traveling, especially during the holiday season. I actually wrote an entire ebook called The Mindful Traveler, which gives you tons of strategies and techniques to guide you on a more peaceful experience of traveling despite all that can happen. So be sure to check out my website, transformwithtravel.co, for the ebook, The Mindful Traveler. And you can actually get 10% off your order if you use the code LAUNCH10. So feel free to check that out so you can have that with you at all times during your holiday season. Okay, back to the tip. When we are feeling really ungrounded or really out of our bodies and just inhabiting the space of our minds, it's very important to remember that we exist in a body. And so how we do that is using techniques which really fall under really more like a somatic approach, a body experience, the felt sense of the body. And it could be super easy, even if you're on a plane, if you're driving, if you're stuck with your kids, as simple as taking very pepperminty or spearminty gum or little mints, sour candies, that type of sensory experience of bringing yourself back into the sense of taste, but also moving your jaw. It helps you come back into your body. So I would always have little tiny mints or gum or sour candies with me so that when I feel like I'm living up in my head and I'm getting ungrounded and I'm feeling really unsteady or anxious, having the literally just a little treat, pop it in my mouth, and I just focus on breathing back down into my body, kind of just settling back down into my body. And it just is like an instant reminder of, oh, okay, I'm here right now. And what is true in this moment? What can I control in this moment? And enjoying my candy if that's all that I could do. I hope this helps, this little tiny tip. This is one of the smallest little tidbits that you're going to receive inside the Mindful Traveler ebook. So please get it for yourself, get it for a loved one for Christmas. Just give yourself the gift of calm and peace this travel holiday season. And also spread some cheer this season by sharing this episode with a friend, leave a rating or review, and most importantly, keep on exploring.